Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, my name is Councilman Chris Johnson from the 7th District. Welcome to this evening's November Public Safety Meeting. I believe we do have quorum. So if my colleagues wouldn't mind, could you please introduce yourself?
Priel City Council, 8th District.
Cynthia Oliver, City Council, 3rd District.
Michelle
Cyril
Hurley.
Adams, member at large.
Michelle Hurley, 4th District.
Yolanda McCoy, 6th District.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone spending your evening going over some important matters. We do have a somewhat pretty lengthy agenda, so I just wanted to cut to the chase. The first item on the agenda is ordinance number. Make sure I have the exact number. Okay, ordinance number 2034. This is to amend Chapter 35 of the City Code, creating a citizen complaint review board. I do have some amendments to this ordinance. Maribel, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. The First Amendment is on page 2. It's section 2-150.80, subsection B, where it talks about composition. At where after it says clergy of the City of Wilmington, we'll be adding language. Further, the majority of the composition of the CCRB should not have a law enforcement background.
Mr. Chair, can you state the line for that? Which line?
It should be line. So subsection B, and it is the last line of subsection B. So it's the first, it's on page 2, it's the second line.
Can you repeat the motion?
Motion is to amend section 2-150.80 subsection B. And the proposed amendment is adding to the end of the paragraph, adding the majority of the composition of CCRB should not have a law enforcement background. Shall not have a law enforcement background.
Give me a second.
No problem.
I think you need a second, Chair.
Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Now, Maribel, I may have some further amendments, but I think we could do those at a later time. Just some slight changes.
At a later time during this meeting, just to be clear?
No, at a later time, based on the feedback from today's meeting, there may be some further changes. So I just wanted to make that aware. So there may be a second substitute amendment.
Okay. I just wanted to make it clear that your changes need to be voted out of committee before it goes to the floor.
Councilwoman Harley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. What does those acronyms stand for? Did you say CCRC?
Yes, CCRB is the Citizen Complaint Review Board.
Oh, you said B as in boy. Okay.
B as in boy.
Got you. I thought you said C. And my other comment would be, in the future, if you have any amendments, maybe you can send them out to us so we can review them, or were they sent out and I missed the email?
No, they were not sent out. These are recent amendments based on some feedback that I received.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Friel?
Yeah, I don't, I read the ordinance earlier today and I can't seem to pull it up now, but what is the need, and if I'm understanding this right, you're going to have 3 council members on the Civilian Review Board? Am I reading that right?
So we can get into the substance of the ordinance in a bit, but it is there.
Are we still on the amendment? Or?
3 council appointees, so they would not be actual council members.
Oh, okay. All right. I read that to be 3 council members. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. So so at this time, I would like to discuss substitute amendment to ordinance 20-34. Again, the only substantive change with the proposed amendment was simply adding to the statute, to the composition portion, that no member, not the majority of the members should not be law enforcement. But going deeper into the legislation, this was first introduced back in the summer of 2019. Ordinance 2034, establishing this CCRB, is a long time coming. This is something, frankly, that Wilmington should have done years ago. And what we're doing is creating a citizen review board, which will be examining police complaints and allow citizens to have another avenue of recourse. Now, as I will go through portions of statutes and also highlight certain portions, but the intent of this is to maximize the effectiveness of a board, given its just constraints of the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights, which is Title 11, Section 9200, which also, many of my colleagues and a lot of public knows what it is by now, but it is something that constrains a lot of the authority that the board will have. But my wish and my hope is that we have to start somewhere, and so to go forward, this is going to be a step in the right direction. So just to kind of break down the portions, on the composition of the board is very important, and that's with the substitute amendment that I presented this evening, is that we need to make sure it's a fair and balanced board. So the board needs to have not just mayor appointees, not just city council appointees, but a variety of appointees from the public sector, private sector, and also nonprofits. By the ordinance, it sets out that there will be permanent seat on the board, on the 9-member board, for the ACLU, the NAACP, and also Wilmington Hope Commission, Latin American Community Center, and also a spot for a clergy member from the City of Wilmington. This is a board where, for qualifications, if you go to subsection C, all those who are a part of this or to be part of the board are to be qualified. So they should have experience in law, civil rights, or law enforcement. So these to be individuals who know what's going on. Now there is a component where there will be training for the individuals, but the idea is that these are folks who kind of starting in, they have knowledge in this field and experience, hands-on experience with the criminal justice field. In the terms, there is a staggered term system that will be set up. There is one position for the mayor's office member. This is a member who will be more or less the recording secretary and help be the chief administrator. That's subsection F. Subsection H is the annual budget. This is very important. There is no fiscal note to this ordinance for the time being, but we do expect a budget amendment if and when this passes to work in the next 108th council session to actually get a budget fashioned out. But there will need to be budget every year for normal startup costs and of course expenses relating to hiring and training officers and also public awareness campaign. Again, at this time, I can't determine what the budget amendment will be, but it will be something where it will be reasonable, at least to be able to get us started off the ground. Now, going to subsection 2-15081, duties of the board. This is very important. They will have a duty to investigate and report to the maximum possibility given the law enforcement officer's Bill of Rights. So the board will not only look at complaints, but also will look at recommendations for improvement of policies and procedures, and also community relations. And again, this is something in which they will be recommending to the chief of police a way to improve things. In the past, I think we found on council and public safety committee regarding criminal justice reform has kind of been a leader, but we want to lean on a public facing body that will be able to engage in this process and be able to help Wilmington Police become a better police department. The subsection C, D, E, F just have to do with public education and rules. Again, that's very important. There is a subpoena power. Again, up to the extent that section 9200 will allow, but a subpoena authority is important. And we hope that's broadened because council does have an inherent right to subpoena based on our city charter. So this is simply a delegation of that authority to this board. Again, I hope to get movement at the state level where we can have an even more in-depth subpoena power. The cooperation of the police department is very important. If you turn to the next page, section 2-15082 is very important that we have the cooperation of the police department, that they will provide the woman, they will work with us in working to revise the collective bargaining agreement when necessary. They also will ensure timely responses to this board. Again, this is a step in the right direction in Delaware because we need to take the cloak of secrecy off of law enforcement. And as a council, we've been pushing for this in the city for a long time. Cooperation by the police is paramount. Section 2-15083, confidentiality is of utmost importance. It not only witnesses and complainants, but victims, everyone. We want a public facing body, but confidentiality is very important. So redacting body camera footage or redacting names is of utmost importance. I understand there will be aspects that will be being public, but we want to preserve the sanctity of the individual involved because it's often sensitive subjects. So it may be instead of the name Joe Smith, any public document would be redacted and say maybe victim A or victim 1, just again to make sure everyone stays confidential in the process. Meetings of the board, section 2-15084. This is more. This is a board that will be a working board, so it will meet at least 9 times a year. And this is something where business will be conducted at every meeting. Even if there's not an active investigation or matter to discuss, we at least want the board meeting to look at policies and procedures. Now, public reporting is very important. 2-15085. This is a subject in which I have received some feedback on, and I'm still working to make sure the needs of the community are met. We do want the race, ethnicity, gender, age of the complainant out there. We also possibly may want the same attributes for the police officer also to be released. So this is, again, it's a balancing act, but we do want the data and we want the transparency, as many folks in Delaware are pushing for that now. Section 2-15086 is communication. It just sets out specific parameters for communication that within 7 business days of receiving a complaint, there will be receipt by the board, and there'll be just case information given so that the complainant can follow and track what's going on. Whereas, unfortunately, the current process with just internal affairs, a complaint is made, and sometimes there's very little of any feedback that the complainant gets. And the last subsection is subsection 2-15087, which is training. Again, there will be a training aspect to this. We were going to have experienced law enforcement people, personnel, and criminal justice workers, but we do expect that not only is the board going to need training, but also WPD staff, internal affairs, and others. And so again, this, in a nutshell, is a beginning. There still will need to be a full actual board regulations if and when this is authorized that will help guide how the board conducts its meetings, guide the aspects of FOIA. All those things will need to be fleshed out. This right here is the enabling legislation, allowing us to get this work started, to at least authorize us to go ahead and do the budget amendments that are necessary to make this happen. And really, in a nutshell, this is something, again, that's a long time coming. It's something that jurisdictions across the nation have already implemented. Philadelphia, DC, Chicago, Los Angeles, Charlotte, North Carolina. I mean, almost Baltimore, almost every small and mid-sized city has one. And unfortunately, Wilmington, Delaware, we do not. So I think this is very timely. This is something that's been in works for a long time, and we need to do this going forward because it's going to be a fight in the 108th session for those members who are on council to work on the budgetary aspects. But we at least need this authorized so that we could move forward with actually doing this work. So with that, I want to know any comments or questions from members on council. Councilwoman McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question or the statement actually I had was to Councilman Friel's question. I just reread it and it does say choosing 3 Wilmington City Council members. So if you are actually do not want it to be council members and want someone to choose from council to place in that space, you will need to go ahead and make that correction as well. But I do still believe that it would be beneficial for a person from council to be on this as well.
Thank you,
That's
Councilwoman McCoy. Councilwoman Oliver.
Now, I read it also. That's what I was going to repeat what Councilwoman said, because it does say that. So I was going to repeat that. But I wanted to make a statement that I think this is a overdue piece of legislation. I've also, after reading, seen it was on the agenda. I see where they do have this already in effect in Baltimore and Philly, and it is necessary for us to have a citizens complaint review board so we can, we're behind with it, but it has to start somewhere. So I would like to be a co-sponsor.
Yeah. Councilman Adams.
Yes, Chairman Johnson, thank you. Has this ordinance been vetted with the FOP? Have they had a chance to review and vet it?
So I'll be frank with you. Yes, they've reviewed it. I'm going to be candid. There was no substantive feedback. Back in the summer, there were meetings with them and their input was requested, and so far I have not received input. So again, as legislators, we can only do our best. And as long as we outreach to all parties, that's all we can do.
Oh, no, I understand that. So you've offered it to them over the summer, so they've had it for 3 or 4 months. You also had meetings with them to solicit their comments, and they've offered none.
Councilwoman Walsh and I had a joint meeting with Lodge 1, correct.
Well, hey, you did your job then, right?
And also with Noble as well, the Organization of Black Law Enforcement Officers. So again, we can only do our best as legislators.
Understood, but I wanted to make sure they had an opportunity to comment if they needed to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Harley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Council Member McCoy regarding having at least one council member on the review board based on the complaint. So for an example, if the complaint is in the 3rd district, the 3rd district council member would be present or at the table, or depending on what district. Again, like I said, that the complaint is coming from, since we are advocates as well for the community, and we may have just being at the table, understanding the situation and just having that opportunity to advocate. I think that's a great suggestion. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Council President Shabazz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad to see we're moving forward with this this legislation. This is the beginning of the types of police and criminal justice reform that we know that needs to take place, but it's a good place to start. I think congratulate you and the committee and staff for doing your due diligence of doing the research of other cities' best practices, comparing them to our current situation and applying a process that meets what our current needs are. And I know this is just the beginning. And as we see and put this in place, and we see that things need to change, be amended, that keeping our eye on it through our public safety committee, watching the meetings and the outcomes, and doing our due diligence as legislators to amend it if needed, or if not, to just salute it and let it continue to go and work out its intention. So I'm glad to be a co-sponsor on this, and pray that we get up with the times of the criminal justice reform here in the city of Wilmington and put this into action. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for your presentation.
Thank you, Council President. Councilman Friel.
Yeah, one comment, one question. My comment goes back to council members being on it. I think you could find that council members will have a conflict of interest in some of these hearings when you're investigating private citizens. So you should take that into account. Second, could you just go backwards and explain again briefly the conflict that we might have with the State Bill of Rights?
Yes, so the Title 11, Section 9200 is called the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. And then this is a piece of legislation that has existed since the 1970s. What it does is it limits what information is able to become made public by law when there is a law enforcement officer internal investigation. It also prescribes certain rights and duties upon notification of an internal affairs complaint in which the officer must go through. And so this piece of legislation, working with the law department, was crafted again to be in compliance with Section 9200, because we realized there was that potential rub up against, but I believe we have the most potent recipe right now until our friends and colleagues in the Dover move with amending the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights. But this is something that historically, only 13 states at this point have the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights. States such as Mississippi, Louisiana, I believe Georgia, most of southern states, and Delaware is an outlier in terms of having one. So that's something I think for future talk, but this is the maximum we can have with respect to the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights.
But just as follow-up, so if we pass this tomorrow, do they have to provide us with the information we need to have a hearing or have an investigation? And can the officer say, well, I'm just not going to participate and still be covered by the Bill of Rights?
As of the law right now, they would have that right. They would be entitled to refuse to engage in the process. Again, this is what this setup is this board would still have investigatory power. So this board could have their own investigator and do a parallel investigation. So again, that's not the best of both worlds. It would be great to share information, but based on 9200, they would not be able to have information if the department refused. Again, but there have been talks with the Wilmington Police Department and at least administration, and there's going to be efforts to, I think, work within the realm of 9200 so that we can try to share as much as we can, obviously respecting that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Harley?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So I want to direct the question to you, but it's for Councilman Friel. Based on his response about the potential conflict of interest, is that an opinion or is that factual?
Councilwoman Harley, I'm not, I can't speak for Councilman Friel. All I can say is I think not conflict of interest. Well, in terms of conflict of interest of council members, I think he was right in that respect. And I think that would get fleshed out in the rules that the board will prescribe. Say if a family member or associate of that council member is involved in an incident, I think there would be a direct conflict of interest. Therefore, that person couldn't serve on that case. So, that would get fleshed out in the actual rules the board prescribes. But in terms of a conflict of conflict with any provisions in the state code, that again, I believe is addressed by the language we have in here, that this gives us the maximum power up to any limitations set forth by the law enforcement officer Bill of Rights. Again, in a perfect world, that will get amended soon or repealed. But for now, we do have it in state law, so we have to navigate around it.
A quick follow-up.
Yes, please.
Yes. So, of course, family members would be a conflict of interest. That goes without saying. But again, we can flesh it out later. But outside of family members and outside of those that could be considered a conflict of interest, so again, being the advocate and the elected official to support the community, I would like for us to look into that.
That's a great idea. Any Councilwoman Harley, if this passes, when it passes, when the board gets budgeted and also drafts their rules, that would definitely be considered. I think we need to outline what a conflict of interest is, how the council member can withdraw, and so forth and so on.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman McCoy?
Thank you, Chair. So my question is more so about the training. I do realize that there are going to be 9 people who basically have no law enforcement background. And we wanted to make certain that, how do we identify to make certain that they're capable of doing a true investigation, whether or not are we just going to be basically retrieving information from our law enforcement entities and reviewing it and making a judgment, or is it interviewing taking place? To me, I just wanted to make certain that we don't overload people who are basically doing this because they have the heart for it and they're kind, but making this more of, I don't know, something that maybe somebody may need to get paid for. The other statement I do want to make is that I just want to make certain that when I stated that we needed someone from council, because of the fact that the administration is going to have someone taking place there, maybe it might be chief of staff, maybe a secretary. I just felt as though a full-time staff person could be just as beneficial going to this meeting on our behalf as well, rather as a council member. We just wanted to make certain that there was someone who represented city council in those meetings as well. So I'm sorry. So that first question was more so about the training. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman McCoy. Training definitely important. Again, this is time that these kind of initiatives become funded. So this is something where we expect the person, if they're going to be on one of the 9 members, they have to have some kind of justice background. I mean, some justice involved, either community side or the law enforcement side. They're going to have some experience, but the actual individual training will be necessary. And courses for those training And girls, in terms of going forward and staffing, there is going to need to be an allotment of either part-time staff or at least maybe one full-time staff member in order to not only do the administrative piece, but also to handle any kind of correspondence. I mean, that's going to be a lot. As we know, we do have a busy city. So this was engaged with administration with the idea that there would be some kind of budget amendment for some kind of allotment. Again, 108th session, we'll have to take that up and see what it will look like, sort of with like body cameras, but there will need to be some allotment for this staff. So we can have an actual board that's functioning, because that's part of the issue in the research. We found that some cities that didn't fund it, they almost had very ineffective boards because they had boards that existed with volunteers and the board didn't have any power or resources. So this is a part of the funding mechanism in which can be explored where, you know, this will be a certain, this should track the police budget, you know, so if the police budget expands, this office should expand. And so, you know, I think as a council members, we have to put our best foot forward to make sure it's fully funded.
Thank you.
And so just before we go forward, I do want, because I have received feedback from the community and others about the composition, and I believe an amendment for the composition is necessary. A designee provision, I believe, would be good. So with that, I motion to add to line 4 of subsection B of section 2-150.80 in the composition, where we add, and I don't know if you can track this, Mary Bell, but 3 shall be members of Wilmington Council or their designee. So after the words Wilmington City Council, add or their designee, comma, and then the rest will be as is.
Okay. Thank you. I can confirm.
Okay. Is there a second on that amendment?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of that amendment?
Aye.
I'm a no.
Okay. All right. This time, can I have a roll call for that amendment? Okay. Maribel?
You're asking for a roll call of the amendment that just took place?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure there were enough yeses.
Okay. Councilman Johnson,
Yes.
Councilman Adams,
No.
Councilman Friel,
No.
Councilwoman Harley, I think you might be muted, Councilwoman Harley.
Sorry, yes, I was. It's a yes. Thank you.
Councilwoman McCoy,
Yes.
Councilwoman Walsh, I believe, is present in the meeting. Has she been recognized?
I did not see her. At this time, I'd like to welcome Councilwoman Walsh, the Chairwoman Walsh.
I believe
Are you able to speak, Chairwoman?
she's not.
Okay. Then maybe, yeah. Okay, so
For the record,
Hanifa's in here.
Yeah, and please recognize me also, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to recognize Council President Shabazz.
Thank you.
and I've just received a text from Councilwoman Walsh. She's not able to speak. It's a no. President Shabazz.
No.
So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 nays and 3 yeas.
All right, so at this time, that amendment has been defeated and the ordinance will go forward as is. Again, this is something I do believe, even though on this face, I think the enabling ordinance is not on there. This ordinance does enable rules to be drafted and actually enacted sometime early in 108th session. So this is where those type of regulation could be put in, because I think it is, as you see often with state boards, a designee provision is almost always put in anyway by default, because as council members, we can't necessarily make every meeting. Councilwoman McCoy?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm a little confused because yes, I know that the amendment yes, the amendment was defeated, but has the ordinance actually been, we haven't voted on actually the ordinance moving out of council?
Yes, and that's going to come
Okay.
after
All right.
comment. I just wanted to clarify that the amendment
Okay.
was not approved, but we still have to go for it.
Okay.
With that, I would like to, if there's no other comments at this time by members of council, I'd like to move to members of the public. Do we have anybody who's speaking on behalf of this? I would like to recognize Miss Javonne Rich. Can you please state your name, where you're from?
Sure. My name is Javonne Rich. I'm with the ACLU of Delaware.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rich. Okay, the floor is yours. You have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. So to the Wilmington City Council Public Safety Committee members, again, my name is Javonne Rich, and I'm the policy advocate of the American Civil Liberties Union of Delaware. As the nation's oldest defender of civil liberties, the ACLU has fought for constitutional policing that ensures people's rights are protected and maintains public safety throughout our 100-year history. There is a great need for an external check on police and to hold accountable those who have extraordinary powers to deprive citizens of their liberties and sometimes to the extreme, their lives. Building an effective civilian review board is not an easy task, but this proposal is a significant first step. Recommended changes to strengthen this proposal include no member of the board, including the member from the Office of the Mayor, shall have been employed by the Wilmington Police Department. The mayor's office member will have special duties, meaning their impartiality is even more critical to foster public trust. The language about the budget or funding mechanism should be more defined to ensure that funding is adequate and secure. CCRB investigations, hearings, findings, and reports should err on the side of being public. While confidential information may be necessary in some cases, to protect the safety of complainants, it should be the exception and transparency should be the rule. In addition to the data points listed in the proposal, the board should also publish on a quarterly basis the number of stops and arrests made by police officers, whether a search was conducted during the stop and the reason for search, and data about any property and cash seized pursuant to any civil asset forfeiture. In addition, data should be disaggregated by the demographics of the civilian and the demographics of the officer involved. With that said, there are also limitations to the CCRB, as explained earlier, that may actually increase community resentment if citizens seek police accountability from the board, but end up with no resolution. That limitation is the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights, and it presents large obstacles to allowing the CCRB to operate in its full power and effectiveness, including who is authorized to investigate complaints and discipline. Nonetheless, hope remains that there will be amendments to the code that will allow the CCRB to be more effective and enable citizens to have more control over their police departments, including investigative authority and the power to make discipline binding. Moreover, the city can show good faith by not signing police union contracts that prohibit the CCRB from operating at its full strength and providing accountability that citizens so desire. The ACLU of Delaware welcomes partnership with the Wilmington City Council to address other recommendations that will better serve residents and restore faith in law enforcement. Thank you for your time and consideration on this issue.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rich. Is there any other comments by members of the public? Okay, hearing none, I would like to move back to members of council? Are there any other further comments by members of council? Okay. All right. Just in closing, yeah, I'm not even sure the Councilwoman Harley. Councilwoman Harley.
Sorry about that. I wanted to, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to be added on the ordinance as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. In closing, this is as Ms. Rich stated, this is a tremendous first step. I don't let, I don't beat around the bush, and I've said this before with many things, we can't let the perfect get in the way of the good. This is, again, I think, taking all sides in consideration, working with the police department. This is something that will be a significant first step. And that's the way I like to look at it, is a first step. I certainly want the board that has full subpoena power. I certainly want the board that can discipline officers. But unfortunately, right now, our state does not allow us to do that. As with many things, the state of Delaware handcuffs the city of Wilmington and the power and authority we have in order to regulate activities within our city. So with that, we have to navigate around the laws that are in existence now. And so this, I believe, will be a first step in pushing our brothers and sisters in Dover to make the necessary changes, that they hear what our constituents want. They hear what those marching for George Floyd want. They hear what those marching in the memory of Breonna Taylor want. This is what this bill is for them, because we've had enough tragedies in Wilmington, and, we've done a lot this year already. We got body cameras. We published a white book. This has been a monumental year. There has not been so much reform in City of Wilmington City Council until this year. We've pushed so many bills, and we're going to talk about more stuff later tonight. But this is, again, a piece of the puzzle. And this is something that we're going to push in Dover and push, again, our brothers and sisters in the General Assembly, and push the governor to make these changes, because the folks and citizens, the neighbors in the city of Wilmington, want to build trust in the community. So this goes with body cameras as to something that will build that trust. So with that, I would ask for the, I guess, a substitute ordinance 20-034. I would like to, since it is an ordinance, it needs to be voted out of committee. This time I'm asking for a call of those in favor of voting out.
Would you want to accept the motion? You want to, I make a motion to accept substitute out of committee?
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Lee,
Question?
is there anything on the question, Councilman Friel?
Yes, sir. Obviously, I want to be supportive of the establishment of a Citizens Complaint Review Board, but I still have serious concerns, specifically with the composition of the board. They need to be impartial, unbiased, be able to hear what would be two sides to a situation, and they're not there to be advocates for one side or the other. And so until that's cleared up, I just can't support this the way it's written right now. I apologize.
All right. Anything else on the question?
On the question?
Yes.
Well, with that concern, and it's a major one, do we accept the motion to remove that the concerned representatives from the list of individuals on the listed as on the legislation?
So at this time, I really, again, I think there needs to be an appointee of City Council, and at least based on my ideas as a sponsor. I mean, so I certainly do understand the, I guess, the questions, and actually for those reasons, I am going to hold this in committee. And I do hope, I think we can flesh out that, because I think we do want folks to have a council voice, but we need the right composition. So, you know, my hope is that we can flesh this out and move forward. Is there anything else on the question?
Yeah,
Councilwoman?
I guess I have something to say. I will hope you wouldn't hold this up in committee. As you said, I think you should leave it as it is. It was defeated, and like you said, you being a sponsor, you can make them changes a little later on, but I don't see why you would hold it up in committee for something that's as important as a citizens complaints review board. That's just my opinion.
But again, I have not decided yet. I said I'm pondering whether to, but I do want to hear everyone's voice. And Councilwoman Harley, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to be clear on what is it that a council member Friel is not in support of. I thought on the motion it was voted down, so I'm a little confused. To add council members.
Well, so the original draft does have 3 council members. Now, I was going to add language that a designee of the council member could be added. That was the one that was ultimately defeated, unfortunately. And so now we're on the original substitute amendment, which just has 3 members of council. You know, again, and I think strong conflict of interest provisions in the rules can deal with how those council members can, work within a board. So for that, again, I'm willing to consider this, and that's why I'm asking my colleagues what their thoughts are.
Can I have a follow-up to my question I just asked you?
Yes, Councilwoman.
So what was your thinking in terms of adding 3 council members versus maybe 1?
So it's a 9-member board, okay?
Okay.
This is, again, use the best models to the country, including Newark, New Jersey. 9 members, 5 members are public. So 5 members are those community groups, clergy, diverse group. 4 members are the government groups. 3 would be council, 1 would be mayor. So it was trying to be balanced, that there's more people who are community-based than government-based. And so those 3 government, those 3 council members, it was anticipated that they could do it, or their designee could be the properly appointed person to the board. So if the council member didn't want to do it themselves, they could appoint a public community member.
Thanks for the clarification. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Adams.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Johnson. Appreciate that. Just so that I get the clarity on this before I go one way or another on it. Is this a review board where they're reviewing the findings, or since you mentioned subpoena, is this intended to be an investigative board also?
To answer that question, Councilman Adams, it is meant to be both. So this is both looking at policies and procedures, and also investigations up to the authority that they can have given the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights. Now, they don't have authority to discipline officers, that's clear. They have the authority only to recommend discipline to the police chief. Again, this is an involvement because we found in other cities, such as Philadelphia, they had a board similar to what we're trying to implement now. And now they have legislation in Philadelphia to make it stronger, to make it have disciplinary authority. So it's a spectrum, In Wilmington, we're starting from the ground floor. We don't have anything. So this is, again, it's something that we can put in place that will give the citizens some solace. Then we can move forward with getting one that has more teeth.
So the officer then would be subject to 2 investigations, one by his own police department. He could actually be subject to investigation by State Attorney General's office. And this one would be a 3rd board. So the guy would have 3 investigations going on at the same time?
Well, the real world examples that, the officer is under no obligation to be interviewed Certainly the board can get as much information as they can that's publicly available, but they don't have to submit to an interview by this board. But this board, the premise is they would have their own, obviously, personnel, and they would have their own investigator that would help vet these claims. So it wouldn't be, you know, they don't have to sit down with an attorney and get an interview by this board. That certainly is not the purpose. The purpose is that to let the public members have a kind of view into what goes on with police misconduct.
Mr. Chair.
But then again, he'd be subject to parallel investigations by voting the way this currently is structured now, right?
Yes. Look, and that's the way it is in every other city. New York City, Baltimore, Philadelphia. I mean, this is not, and I know there's law enforcement sentiment, but this is not something that's uncommon, because citizens want a seat at the table, and that's what this is for, is to let them try to find out what information they can on their behalf, and have city council advocate for that. So we have so much distrust in Wilmington because no one has a seat. The citizens don't have a seat at the table. So yes, I mean, the answer is yes. And that's something I think we have to get comfortable with. But we need to move forward as a city as to, we've protected law enforcement long enough, and we haven't done anything for the citizens, and our neighbors are leaving us behind. Councilwoman McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to follow what Mr. Adams states. I just wanted to make certain that not only is it parallel, but is it almost simultaneous, like it will not drag on. So that's good to know, because sometimes the people from the outside of law enforcement actually have a different eye on how things actually look and appear. You know, it's good to be able to give that board to be able to give their impression on what they investigated and what they saw, and give that information over. I think that this is important that we have this. I said, because I feel as though the law enforcement has been a little bit desensitized also to what their own findings are, what's going on in their own group. So I'm still very much behind this ordinance.
Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do hear everyone's input and their perspective. And if our goal is to give more citizens at the table, then why do we not give more seats to the citizens and lessen the amount of city council representation? And is there also, and added to that, is there also a part of the process that once the report from the board is complete and presented, does it come back to be heard before council's public safety committee, or what? I'm not clear on what's the next process. So that would give council an opportunity to have some say when the final decision for the citizens about the situation came back and was reviewed before council.
So to answer directly, Council President, yeah, thank you very much for that sentiment. And that's something in a minute I do want to discuss. But first, in terms of the reporting, there is a reporting mechanism in there. So this board at their meetings will be giving reports, and it'll be the 9 meetings a year. Now there's not there's flow to council, but this is not a this is not a committee of council. So more or less, you know, they will operate on their own schedule, and of course deal with both the administration and council, but they're not going to be, you know, they don't have to get like it voted on by council. Like, they will just share information with council and then go from there. But that does bring up a good point, and it's something, if there's a motion on the table I would like to entertain, is that instead of 3 members of council, you know, maybe 2. I mean, that, you know, that's something that can be prescribed later on, but this is some ideas out there. Councilwoman.
So move on your amendment, put down to 2 and add more citizens.
Okay, so and I just want to clarify, Council President, again, in terms of this language, I think maybe we can leave it a little more open-ended. So we could put 3 members of council indoor, 3 additional public members to be determined at a later time. Is that okay?
Wait, say that again. Say it again.
So we will put the language where it's 3 council members, or in a place, or as a substitute, 3 members of the public. Is that clear?
You're saying that's the amended language?
I'm just discussing this with you. It seems like to be that's what you actually want. So because I understand this is open-ended question. So we can deal with this, I think, at a later time in the rules, that these members could be the 3 members of council or it could be 3 public members.
Okay, you're leaving an option in there. You want
Yes.
to say the language of an option,
Yes.
and then finalize that when we do the rules.
Yes.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay. So at this time, I would like to amend section 2-150.80. This is subsection B. Maribel, are you with me?
Yes, I am still with you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so in line,
But this is in addition to what was already amended the
Yes, so
first
we have
time.
the
It's the
first-
Second Amendment.
this is the Second Amendment. This is, I guess, is moved by me, where we add, after it says, shall be 3 members of city council, comma, or 3 members of the public, comma. And then, so at that time, I would like to move that amendment forward. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed?
No.
I believe some are not voting. I believe the ayes have it. So at that time, I would like to, so we have the Second Amendment as well to the composition. Is there any other further comments? I believe Councilwoman Oliver.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to have my hand up. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So I certainly appreciate the discussion. And again, I know we need to flesh out more, I think, as it comes to prescribing the rules and the budget. And that certainly is something which I'm willing to be at the table at as part of the 108th session. But we need to at least get this enabling ordinance started, get this process going. I appreciate and I listen to not only community, I also listen to law enforcement when we were talking about this. Because there was talks about, the law enforcement member, making sure there's enough there. So I think we have enough flexibility with the composition that, it could be 3 members of council or 3 public members that will be able to get some good people. It may end up being 1 member of council, 1 term. It may end up being 2 members and 1 public member. We'll give that flexibility to the board. They can prescribe in the rules how many public members versus council members are going to be part of that 3-person slot. So with that, at this time, again, I understand, I appreciate everyone bearing with us. This is very important. This is something we have talked about for months or for years in Wilmington. And number 1, this has made an effort to make our city safer. We've done things like body cameras. We're working on publishing white book. We're working on serious things that change the lives of Wilmingtonians. So with that, I would ask to move this to substitute the amendment 1 to substitute to ordinance 20-34, and also amendment 2 to substitute ordinance 2034. I would like to move that. I would like to move at this time to move it out of committee to a full council meeting.
So moved.
All those
Second.
in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
I'm going
No,
to vote present. I still support the ordinance, but I just can't agree with the composition. It's supposed to be a public board.
So noted. Any other no's on record?
I'm sorry. The no's, who were the no's?
Adams was a no.
In Friel, I believe.
I voted present.
Okay, present. Okay.
I'm hoping you clean that up.
Thank you.
Councilman Friel. All right, I believe the ayes have it. So this will be moving out of committee to the full council agenda. Maribel, do you have the date?
Excuse me, November 19th, council meeting.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
And I appreciate everybody hanging tough out there watching, but this is very important stuff to go through. So with that, I would like to move to item number 2 on the agenda. This is a I believe this is Councilwoman Oliver's piece.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is a resolution that identifies a need for the City of Wilmington to be exempt from the state codes that prohibit Delaware municipalities from enacting legislation that changes existing gun and firearm codes. So this is something that we have been discussing for a while, Chris and some other council members, and we have to address it. We've met with law, met with some Dover legislators, so we are very familiar that this piece of legislation has to be sent to Dover. We're not city council, we're not able to infringe on states' jurisdictions, but with everything's going on in the world nationally, we just wanted to let our residents know that city council members' eyes are on the prize, and we are aware of the gun violence that's occurring in the City of Wilmington. And if anybody wants to add anything to this resolution, feel free. So that's what this is all about. This is not our jurisdiction. I like to say that again. So that's why law had to make some adjustments, but we just wanted the residents, the City of Wilmington, to know that, you know, all city council feels the same way. And it's not so much we could do. Some things are out of our jurisdiction, such as this gun registration. So I just wanted to let everybody know that we are paying attention to the residents from the City of Wilmington. And Chris, would you like to add on to that?
Very much, Councilwoman Oliver. I stand with my sister, Councilwoman Oliver, and all council members. This is a direct plea to the General Assembly to help make changes. Prior to 1985, preemption did not exist. So that means Wilmington could legislate in regards to gun violence in an appropriate fashion. But since 1985, not only Delaware, but other states, Pennsylvania, Maryland, a lot of other states around the country have laws at the state level that prevent municipalities from doing anything. If you look at, say, Philadelphia up the road, the reason they have a lot of court battles, Supreme Court cases, dealing with this preemption issue. Every time Philadelphia tried to do something, the legislature in Harrisburg would then say, no, you can't do it, and strike it down. And that's precisely what is even happening in Wilmington. So we need the power to be able to do what we can do, because simply we have different issues. What's going on in Kent County, what's going on in Sussex County, what's going on in Seaford, areas like that are agricultural are completely different than what we have going on in Wilmington. So we just want the power within reason to be able to legislate, to be able to look at the CDC reports, look at gun violence in a serious fashion, and be able to do some things that are just special and germane to Wilmington. So I applaud Councilwoman Oliver for fighting for this for a long time. I hope this gets out of committee, and then we really fight as a council in the 108th session to get Dover to step up to the plate and allow Wilmington to govern and protect our citizens here. And with that, I would like to call Councilwoman Hartley. I believe you were first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Council Member Oliver. The spirit behind this legislation is on point, spot on, and I would like to be added as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just actually have one question. Just wanted to find out whether or not it was more so about creating any type of registry or trying to get the Delaware General Assembly to allow us to create our own laws that as we need to when it comes to the City of Wilmington. I just wanted to get more. I just want to get clarity on this resolution.
So,
well, go ahead, Karis, go ahead.
Councilwoman Oliver.
No, go ahead, because we worked on it together. Go ahead, you answer that.
Really, the answer is that to let us do our own. We want the power to be able to legislate in regards to gun violence intervention. Right now we can't do anything. If it touches slightly on guns, we can't do anything at the city level, and that's simply the unfortunate way it is. And Councilwoman Oliver, you may have something to add to that.
No, I was going to say, speaking to the law department, that's basically what she said. The city council members, we don't have preview to touch this it has to go to Dover. It's out of our, it's out of our jurisdiction, but it is a necessary, even law department has stated, 'cause, I mean, just due to the percentage of the gun incidents that's occurring in Wilmington, you can look at the stats. We need to be able to do something that's reasonable. So that's what this is all about.
May I follow up?
Yes, Councilwoman. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So I'm glad you actually stated that because previously I actually have voted against registry from Councilman Williams. And the thing is, I am more inclined to vote for this resolution because we need to be able to figure out what best fits this city, not just, the state as a whole. So rather than just stating that I want to just build this, but to give us the freedom to look at whatever information or data we've already collected and do something about it, I'm definitely more inclined to support this resolution.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman McCoy. Is there any other comments by members of council? Okay, Councilman Adams. Councilman Adams, the floor is yours.
I'm sorry, I meant to hit my mute.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Similar to last piece of legislation, this piece of legislation too, I just think just expounds the boundaries of council beyond where they should be. Us registering every resident's gun here in the city, what's the intent of that? We already have a gun registration in the state, and you mean to tell me we can't cross-reference something like that? And to say that's going to control gun violence, only the law-abiding citizens are going to register their weapons. Certainly not the illegal guns are out there. They're illegal because they're not registered. So quite frank with you, I don't understand why we're trying to add one more thing and restrict one more person's right here in the city of Wilmington.
So Councilman Adams, I do, we often get along on a lot of things, but I do have to clear up some misinformation. Delaware does not have a gun registration system. You can ask Moms Demand Action. And then number two, if you really go and look at the state, so there's a direct relationship. You can go to the Gabby Giffords Gun Center. They have a ton of data on this. The states with the stricter, more comprehensive gun control, they have safer states. Connecticut, New Jersey, you look at states like that, they have less gun violence. Now, it helps with illegal guns, but it also helps with the law-abiding citizens because we make sure only those law-abiding citizens, there's checks and balances to make sure they get their hands on guns. And I know it's not a cure-all, but the data's out there. And so I believe more comprehensive gun control equals safer Delaware. And that's just point blank, the data shows it. So with that, is there any other comments by members of council? Okay, I would like to flip it to members of the public. Is there any comments? Okay, all right, with that, I will just have a brief closing and then I'll pass it to Councilwoman Oliver. Again, this is due time. This is something where we've gone over this. I believe I was looking at ordinance from Councilman Norman Oliver from almost 20 years ago regarding gun registration system, and nothing was done. And 10 years ago, nothing was done. 5 years ago, nothing was done. There was talk. And frankly, all the activists, all the youth in the street, they're tired of the talk. They want action. They want comprehensive and well thought and well planned action. And it's our duty to do. And so I think if allowing us to explore gun safety laws in Wilmington, if that's what's needed, then I believe that's what's needed. Again, this is something that is delicate. This is something where we could maybe even have it where still changes would need to be approved by the General Assembly, similar to a charter change. That's okay, but at least let us do it. And so with that, I'll pass it to my colleague, Councilwoman Oliver.
Sure, I see Councilwoman Harley's hand up.
Councilwoman Harley.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. Thank you. I just real quick wanted to underscore what Council Member McCoy has said as it related to Councilman Williams. When he presented it, there was just, it wasn't enough information for me to support it at that time, and I didn't. So I'm glad that this time around, I'll have the opportunity to get it right. And you were right, Council Member Johnson, we do not have that in place. So this is definitely an opportunity for us to explore options. So thank you.
And Council President.
I apologize. I could not get to raise my hands and I finally got it working, but I just wanted to applaud Councilwoman Oliver for her steadfastness in pushing this through. And it's a great piece of legislation. And congratulations again, Councilwoman Oliver.
Okay. And Councilman Oliver, closing words.
Yeah, I would just like to thank all council members for supporting this piece of legislation, and hopefully Dover can give us some type of meat to work with. And as you said, my brother had put in something similar 10 or 11 years ago, but then it was a different time than what it is now. So I just looked into it, changed some things, talked to law, met with some legislators, and hopefully the city of Wilmington, with all the violence going on, maybe we'll be able to help somebody with this. And as you said, along with the CDC report. So I'm looking forward to receiving something back. So as everyone said, now we have some options. Thank you. That's all.
And since this is a resolution, it does not need to be voted out of committee, and it will be on the Tuesday, November 19th agenda. Thursday, November 19th.
Thank you.
I apologize. Okay. All right. Moving on. There is a third item on the agenda is a resolution adopting the Newcastle County Multi-Jurisdictional All Hazard Mitigation Plan 2020 update as approved by FEMA. This time, I just believe the sponsor is Walsh. I do not believe she's available at this current moment. So at this time, I would just like to briefly read it. This legislation is to prepare, to allow the city to prepare and maintain a comprehensive plan and program for emergency management in the city. And this should be integrated into the coordinated emergency management plans of the state and local federal government to the fullest possible extent. Is there anyone from the administration to speak on behalf of this?
Yes, Councilman, this is Willie Patrick, Director of Emergency Management, and I'm here to speak to the ordinance.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Patrick. The floor is yours.
Thank you, thank you. And I think that council received the executive summary of the plan, and also section 6.2, which is our local specific mitigation actions, right, for the city of Wilmington. So in the executive summary, there's a plan, the process of the plan, the coordination of local government, and then also prioritizing the recipients of mitigation grants, maintenance of the plan, the risk assessment, and then the probability of some future events. And then it also states about 15 of Newcastle County's mitigation goals and objectives. And just like you stated in the ordinance, the purpose of the grant is to update the 2020 multi-jurisdictional all hazards plan. And it does provide guidance in mitigation for Newcastle County in unincorporated and in incorporated areas, as well as University of Delaware's campuses in Wilmington and Newark. It identifies hazard mitigation goals and objectives, and recommends actions and initiatives for county municipal governments to reduce injury and damage from natural and man-caused hazards. The plan keeps Newcastle County and municipalities qualified to obtain. This is the most important part, a real important part of the plan, is it keeps Newcastle County and its municipalities qualified to obtain all disaster assistance, including public assistance, which we are in the process right now of applying for public assistance grants for COVID-19. Individual assistance, hazard mitigation grants, and such. The plan is, with this whole process of the plan, it was in the planning process. Just let me speak to briefly to the planning process. The plan is a product of multiple hours of work and effort of a lot of organizations, peoples, the stakeholders, municipal governments. Not just the city of Wilmington, every municipal government in Newcastle County has a part of the plan. The last plan was updated in 2014. FEMA requires that the plans be updated every 5 years. The plan, Newcastle County requested an extension because of the COVID-19 pandemic state of emergency, and was granted. And so the plan was completed early last month. There was a steering committee created. You'll see in the executive summary that the steering committee consists of every municipality, Newcastle County government, DNREC, FEMA, and University of Delaware, and of course our government. There was coordination with planning. There were many meetings. The steering committee. Dave Carpenter, who is the Director of Emergency Management for Newcastle County. He and I met with some of our city departments, L&I, Public Works, and the Law Department, to just get a feel for some of their concerns as far as hazard mitigation and some of the projects that were that they started to be very essential to our mitigation plan. The last part of the executive summary is the maintenance of the plan. The plan is it's a living document. It's updated, like I said, every 5 years. But during the course of that 5 years, if there's needs to change the plan or update the plan, that's done. And the risk assessment, one of the things that Newcastle County did with our cooperation was just to look at some of the probable future events that might happen in Newcastle County, being flood, hazmat incidents, coastal winds, winter storms, tornadoes, dam and levee failures, public health incidents, which we're in the midst of right now, earthquakes and droughts and hail. And they found that flooding is probably one of the most, as far as natural hazards, it's probably one of the most probable incidents that's going to happen in Newcastle County. And like I stated, the last part of the executive summary consists of 11 golden objectives that Director Dave Carpenter and Newcastle County OEM with our input, and the other municipalities identified for Newcastle County. In regards to our in section 6.2 of the plan, there's 14 different objectives that are set forth for the city of Wilmington, from the some of it being public education, being public awareness of hazards. The other being some of the projects that we have ongoing, the wetlands part, addressing some of the flooding that occurs on 12th Street, East 12th Street, addressing the flooding that happens on Shabazz Creek, Right, so there are some public education, some awareness programs, and then there's some actual projects that are identified as part of our the City of Wilmington's mitigation plan. So, and I'm open for any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you, Chief Patrick. Now, is there any fiscal aspect to this?
No, not at all.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you very much. Is there any comments or questions by members of council? All right, hearing none, I would like to take it to members of the public. Are there any comments or questions? Okay, all right, hearing none, I want to turn back to council. If there's no further comments or questions, I would like to move for, since this is a resolution, it does not need to be voted out of committee, and this item will be placed on the Thursday, November 19th council meeting.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. All right, and finally, last but not least, moving to item number 4 on our agenda is a presentation on the Group Violence Intervention Program by Director Bobby Cummings.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
I have
Councilwoman.
a question for you. I've read this this presentation, and I was wondering if it's possible if we can just ask some questions, because a lot of this that's just what it is, a presentation, and it's really no meat to it. So I was just wondering, if it's possible, if we can just get straight to it and ask him some questions.
Yeah, so, and again, I know it is a long PowerPoint, so I don't know how Chief Cummings wants to proceed. I mean, just maybe a brief 1-minute overview, then we can get to the questions, because I think Councilwoman McCoy has some questions too. So, I obviously want to be mindful of time. So Chief Cummings, are you able to give a brief overview and then jump into questioning?
Okay, thank you and good evening. We can do a brief overview, but what I'll do right now is we have several members of our team that are also on this call. We have Megan Wallace, we have Chris Kressler.
Can we see him? Is it possible we can see him? Megan Wallace, may I see her face?
All right. Yeah, everyone, Councilwoman Oliver, I think if you go to grid mode, then you can see.
No problem.
Yeah, go to grid.
Okay.
You can see everyone's faces. Got it?
Yep.
Okay. All right. You can continue.
Okay, so if everyone pretty much has an understanding of what GVI is, I'll just ask Megan to give the brief presentation from the maybe slide 3.
See, Chris, that's what I'm saying. I see Megan, but I mean, he just said Megan's name, but I see a whole lot of names, but I don't know who's on his team. So I would like to so I can write it down so I can see who I'm looking at.
Just bear with me. So Councilwoman Oliver, I think it's because they're sharing the screen, so then it goes to the image.
Okay.
So now it's like you'll see some faces, but not everyone.
So, okay, because
once she starts talking, I think you'll see her face.
May he identify the 5 people? He said Megan Wallace.
Megan Wallace, Chris
Kressler,
who else?
and Jay Washington, and obviously myself.
Okay.
Okay, you can continue.
Okay, so Megan, did you want to just hit a few points out of CDC, and we just go right into questions?
Muted.
Thank you, council members, for having us this evening. So I can, my name is Megan Wallace. I work with Governor Carney's Family Services Cabinet Council. The Group Violence Intervention Strategy is a partnership with a number of different law enforcement entities as well as social service organizations in the state to meet the needs and provide accountability to members of the community that are engaged in group violence. And so I work with the Cabinet Council to muster the resources of the state agencies on the part of social services. We also, like I said, have a partnership. I know Inspector Ash and Chief are on the call or were on the call earlier. And so this has been over a year of implementation, early implementation that we've engaged in to implement group violence intervention. It's an evidence-based strategy that is supported by the National Network for Safe Communities out of John Jay College. We have worked to hire a number of staff that work with and for Director Cummings over the course of the last year. You all probably remember the public announcement last summer when we brought Bobby on to lead this work out of the Department of Health and Social Services. Since that time, we've beefed up capacity out of that agency. We're happy to answer any questions about the strategy, about the components of the strategy, about the investments made on behalf of Governor Carney's administration into the supports related to this work, as well as the partnership itself and the components of the partnership. So we're prepared to give a formal presentation that is associated with the deck. Otherwise, we can take questions.
All right, so it sounds like we have some questions ready. So I'm going to just jump into questions. Councilman Oliver.
Yes, I was wondering how much is this, how much is your budget? How much is the overall budget for this program?
Well, one of the things that we're currently working through is the budget for this strategy, and it has not been solidified yet. Again, because of the new creation, and we just got housed out of DSS for the state. So I don't have a specific number for you for the budget right now.
What I can share, Councilwoman, is that if we consider all of the positions that have been reclassified to support Bobby's office, as well as those positions outlined in the Department of Corrections to create a GVI unit that is enabled to support both law enforcement as they typically do, but also the social service component that is driven by Bobby's team. We have over $1 million in investment in staff across the Department of Health and Social Services, as well as Department of Correction.
Thank you. So is that $1 million included your outreach workers in the streets also?
That includes, yes, that includes the staff of Bobby's team.
And I guess that's my next question. How many, I guess Bobby can answer that question. How many do we have that's in the streets, Bobby, outreach workers?
Can we refer to him as Chief Cummings?
I mean, Chief.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry about that. I'm sorry.
So in terms of outreach workers, we're partnering with CIT. However, GVI strategy specifically, we have support and outreach, which we have currently, we have John Cook, who is our Director of Support and Outreach. We have Javonne Simpson, who is a supervisor over 4 case managers. So we give you 6 individuals right now who are dealing in that aspect.
And I didn't notice, do you have anything that you can send at a later date for some outcomes? And the only reason I'm asking these questions, Chief Cummings, is because of the numbers of shooting in the city of Wilmington. And I just talked to Councilwoman Harley about this. She was talking about having y'all on. And it just doesn't seem like the city is getting the resources that are available, and maybe they are, and we just don't see them. So I was just wondering, was there some outcomes that we could see what's going on? Everybody keeps, blaming the mayor and the chief. And I was saying, well, if we have individuals who's doing some of this outreach work, I mean, from the governor down, I would just like to know who it is, because we never see anyone out there. Maybe they are, and we just don't see them. Maybe they're working in a different area, but I don't see them in the city of Wilmington.
We're currently in the process of preparing our annual report. Obviously, we got delayed because of the COVID, but that we should have that done very soon.
Councilwoman, I'd also add that the workers that Bobby has on his team are providing direct support case management, intensive case management for people who are group involved, and people that's the kind of language that we use for group violence intervention. So people who are directly engaged in group violence, and we use the term group because they're not necessarily organized gangs in every case. And so Bobby's team is working directly with well over 40 group members at this point, I believe, both adults and juveniles, to provide them the social service supports and life coaching and case management, intensive case management to help change some of the behaviors that drive the violence and their participation in the violence. They aren't necessarily the same as what we've seen from other models, like the Cure Violence model out of Chicago, where you see street outreach workers doing intervention on the street and mitigation of conflict. So they're not necessarily as visible as you might expect someone doing that sort of engagement in the community.
That's what I'm looking for, right?
Yeah. We are also working to support Daryl Chambers and the community intervention team that he is working to stand up, where they are actually using the Cure Violence model, and they are working to fundraise at this point for full operation, which would include street outreach workers, which I think you're referring to.
Correct. Thank you for noting that. I'm gonna just make a statement. I'm gonna let it go. I just see, even, Mr. Chambers, I mean, it's a lot of groups getting paid a lot of money, but I just don't see the work that's being, I just don't see the work that's being done. That's just my opinion. I don't think it's effective. I'm not saying people aren't doing their job, but it's just a lot going on out here with this violence, and to see such a nice package. We never hear the outcomes. We never see the I just never get anything. I mean, if y'all wasn't here today, look how long it's been. So I've been, and I think even maybe if y'all send us something once every 6 months or something. I mean, I don't expect no one group to solve all this that's going on, but it'd just be good when people say, well, who's out here doing the work? I can say, look, we have people in the system, doing outreach work. I just don't know what's going on, so I don't see it. So we constantly, no one calls us. We make phone calls, leave messages, and it's, everybody's just blaming this on the chief and the mayor, and it's organizations such as y'all that's doing a good job, but we just don't see it. We don't know what's going on. So I'm just frustrated.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Councilwoman, and I totally agree that we need more opportunity to partner with the council. I think that all things considered, Bobby came on in July of last year, hit the ground running, and we've been working closely to get him oriented and get him a team of support out of his office so that we can actually meet the needs of the community. And I think that all things considered, especially given COVID, he wasn't even 6 months in before we were hit with that. They've done the best that they can. And we fully intend to engage not just city council, but other community partners, especially those kind of on the front lines. And we really appreciate your commentary on that and respect it.
And I appreciate you mentioning COVID. You're right about that. So COVID can kick in as, okay, even if we just get a report, sent over every now and then. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Any other questions by members of council?
Yes, I'm trying to get okay, there I am. Sorry, Mr. Chair, that I didn't raise my hand.
Council President.
Yes,
Yeah.
Chief Cummings.
Yes, Council President.
So I understand what in some of the work that you've done thus far, you have actually put your first circle, I guess you would call it, a first intake, or what was it, collective?
Call in.
Sir?
That call in that we did.
Call in, that's the word I'm looking for. You did your first call in. And could you give us as much as specifics about that and the impact that's had thus far?
So that initial call in was done in December of 2019. And from that initial call in, there were 16 individuals that were invited. We had 10 individuals show up. Out of that population that showed up, we end up servicing 9 of those individuals. But after that call in, we had picked up additional individuals to move us up to about 20 people we were serving after that first call in. We had several call-ins that were scheduled to take place. The first one after that was supposed to take place in March, but obviously then COVID hit. And then there were several that were planned out quarterly through the year. But because of the restrictions that have been placed because of COVID, we've been unable to do additional call-ins. However, we've been going out doing custom notifications and impacting individuals who voluntarily engage with us to engage in the services that will help them change their lives. Not every individual we come upon, is voluntarily entering, but we have gotten the majority of the individuals who, when we're dealing with them, have not re-engaged in a lot of violent incidents. Now, we have lost some individuals due to some violence because of things that have happened to them, or they have not totally changed their lifestyle around. But we've been pretty successful in the individuals, again, that do want to change their lives. So again, from that initial call-in, we engaged about 16 individuals. We had, out of that, we were engaging, I believe, 4 different groups at that time. But since then, we're engaging several different groups. Now, some of the violence that you also see that is occurring after we did that initial call-in, these were adult groups because the strategy was built around dealing with adults. But because of what we saw going on in the city in terms of the youth violence, we've readjusted what we're doing in our strategy to engage juveniles. And we started engaging juveniles around July. We've done some custom notifications with them. We've gotten individuals that are dealing with not just the juvenile, but their families to help them make some adjustments and do things a little bit different. Again, that will impact their lives in a positive way. So right now, I know we have 6 juveniles that we're dealing with, not just the juveniles, but their family engagement. And then there were a lot of things that we had to work around in terms of being able to speak to the juveniles. We needed consent from the family members or adult guardian, because we could not just go and talk to the individual child. And then talking to the individual child was not where we needed to go in terms of impacting their particular lives, because you needed to engage their family. So the family structure there will help deal with the juveniles a lot more than just dealing with the juvenile themselves. So we've been doing a lot of that on face value, where, like you said, it might not be publicly put out there, and we don't want to put out individual names, and we don't want the perception that these individuals who voluntarily come to us are being seen as individuals who give up information for what's happening on the street, because that is not what we do. These individuals are engaging because they want to do something in their particular lives. So we don't publicize that a lot. But we will, in our report, provide aspects of what has taken place, the services that have been rendered out, the types of things that have been taking place, like, putting people into housing. We've put people into emergency housing because of shooting incidents that have occurred. We've gotten people food assistance, medical benefits, barrier reduction, things like, identification, social security cards, birth certificates, things that will put them in a better position to move forward. So at this point, I'll just stop and see if there are any other questions or follow-up.
Thank you, Chief Cummings. And from it might be too soon because you probably don't have collected enough data to actually say whether you are in the position yet to expand to the numbers that you have, make any other major changes. But I look forward to to hearing what your next call in, so you have some data to compare with, apples, the 2 different call-ins, and see what other type of possible positive impact that we can make to address this. Because I hear you saying a number of 10 or 20 when we know we have a larger number of young people out there that could use this assistance. I'm just eager to see how we can expand our capacity to address and assist more young people.
Absolutely. And as you're indicating in terms of staffing, like Megan said, we're just really getting up to staff right now. And this is not our full staff, but we're just bringing people on. It would have been, let's see, what's this, November. So around late October, middle of October, we were just still bringing people in who need to be brought up to speed on the process. Individuals who need training around what we're doing. But again, they come in with an excellent background because we brought in people who've been in the social services field for a long time. They know the ins and outs of the state services system. But again, it just takes time to get everyone up to speed on where we're going and what we're doing with the strategy.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Councilwoman McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Chief Cummings. I'm so glad that you were here. I've run into you like last year. I really wanted you to come on. Unfortunately, things kind of got shuffled around. I'm so glad you're here to present. But it seems to me that you may not have been able to give us as much last year because you were probably just getting on. So I'm glad that you're here to present. I just want to state that listening to Chief Tracy, I was already under the impression that it was not so much as an outreach on the streets. Just listening to how he made me aware of what GVI was and the groups that you were trying to intervene with, I already kind of had that understanding was people that you were bringing in, not so much actually going out to. So I had that understanding, but I would love to find out whether more about a collaboration because of the fact we see so much that is actually going on in our neighborhoods. They've mentioned CURE, they mentioned it was that community intervention, I think, crime intervention, something like that.
Yeah,
so it's different outreach groups that we do have here within the city, and whether or not that collaboration is actually going on with GVI so that you can be doing those things simultaneously, because you're 10 to 20 and then they're 10 to 20 and then someone else is 10 to 20 may actually give us a real impact in our city rather than you just working on one group at a time.
Well, understand that, Chief Tracy's people, they have all the intel of the people we need to focus on in terms of the violence. And that's one of the things that we do also focus on as I attend their intel meetings and I attend the meetings with the chief to understand his strategy and who needs to be contacted as it relates to the violence. So what we're not doing, we're not trying to impact every individual who has been identified by the problem analysis, but we're trying to focus on the individuals that the chief directs us to go to that are engaged in the current violence, because not all groups are currently engaged in violence. So we try to focus on those individuals who are having the most impact at the time. So one of the things that we've recently done, again, because this is evolving and it's growing as we move every single day. So it's being steered a little bit more by the intel with Inspector Ash in terms of when a violent incident occurs, because we know a lot of this is retaliatory in nature. So which groups do we need to impact at that moment, and which individuals within that group are at highest risk of, reoffending or engaging in violence, and at what point as GVI can we go in and give a message to these individuals along with the captains of the district, of depending on where it's happening, and we go in with probation and parole also. So we go in and we give the message of, the law enforcement has their message, we have the social services message if they're looking for a pathway out. So we do engage with that, and we are also building coalitions with different members within the community, like you said, that do provide other services that we can probably take advantage of as we do this work.
Bobby, I would add to that Councilwoman, I heard your comment about the need to, some intervention work is happening at the street outreach level. Some intervention work is happening through Bobby's team. What's important to remember is that group violence intervention at its core is a law enforcement strategy, which means that there's always going to be a bit of a shortcoming because not everybody wants to engage in a program or even a social service program that's affiliated with law enforcement for a number of different reasons. And so that's where in other cities, we've seen the relevance and importance of a solid street outreach effort through a cure violence model or other models. When implemented well, it has the opportunity to reach those people who might not want to engage with a law enforcement rooted strategy. And so in Wilmington, we're lucky that some of that groundwork is already in motion. And I will add, just for the context for the council, that we also have Christiana Care, who has stepped up to invest in a hospital-based violence intervention program through Dr. Chen, who some of you may know through Council President Shabazz's work with the Wilmington Community Advisory Council. That hospital-based violence intervention program is also an evidence-based strategy focused on reducing re-injury of those people who come in with gunshot wounds, their stab wounds. And so each of these three strategies, from group violence intervention to street outreach to the hospital-based violence intervention program, all have an opportunity to open a door to someone who is engaging in violence in our city to offer them a way out. So the goal is really to make sure that through Bobby's team and through the hospital and the street outreach work that's kind of in development, that these programs develop in coordination and collaboration with each other, so that they're not duplicating services and they're able to reach those people who need to be reached through whatever door they want to walk through.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Councilwoman Oliver, I believe you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate with Chief Cummings that now I do see the difference in the two organizations, and guess I can elaborate on what Councilman McCoy said, maybe with him working with the other group that's on the street. So now I see that you're not the group that's out there on the street, like maybe Wolfie and them group. I see you do something totally different. And maybe if y'all can collaborate, as she said, instead of the numbers being so low, maybe next time the report will be higher. Even though dealing with COVID, we still had, I'm not going to give a pass that we still haven't had a lot of shootings with COVID. So it seemed like it would, you know, with his group, with your group, I would just expect the numbers just to be a little higher. But I'm just glad both of you are out there. Your group is doing a good job and keep up the good work. And I know, you know, it takes time to get all this, but it seems like y'all have such good services that they could be utilized just a little bit more. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
So to the esteemed panel members, I do have some questions that I don't think have gotten out so far. You know, number one is just Chief Cummings. I don't know if you can answer it, or Ms. Wallace. What's the long-term funding outlook? How long is your program funded? Because I've been around for Cure Violence. I've been around for the other iterations of programs, and it always seems to be like an ADD. You know, they fund a program for a year or two, and then the funding dries up, and they try something else, and then the funding. You know, what is the long-term funding? At least the intent right now, is it a good 3 to 5 years of investment in this program?
I can take a stab at that, Bobby, first if you want.
All right.
So Councilman Johnson, totally appreciate the question. We recognize the same challenges that you recognized, and with any of this work, if you look at any national research on any of the evidence related to the 3 programs that I described, they talk about the need for long-term investment. These strategies, there's no such thing as an easy fix here. That investment needs to be there, not just for the immediate, but for the long term. And in fact, usually you don't see progress on these sorts of programs and the impact that they're having in the community for years, 2 to 3 years after implementation. So I think for the most part in GVI, we would consider ourselves through the first year of implementation, which is, we're at the point now where we're hoping for some of the outcomes that we'd like to be seeing in the community. That's not the case with the other 2 programs that were mentioned. They have not been funded up until this point where they've received early seed investment. And so in the case of GVI, the really good thing is that the governor has invested most of the resources in staff positions that are full-time employees of state government. So it would be hard to undo the resources that have been invested into Bobby and his team without getting rid of state employee positions. So the investment has been made in staff capacity and infrastructure within the Department of Health and Social Services in the team. That's also true of the Department of Corrections GVI unit. In the case of the other 2 programs, we are working to get that sort of long-term commitment from Christiana Care. They have said that they will continue to invest in the program. They made it a priority, even with the budget constraints that they're facing related to COVID. They found a way to fully fund their program, not just this year, but next year as well. And we suspect that, or we're hopeful that they will continue that commitment. In the case of the street outreach program, they have seed investment from the Longwood Foundation and are working to do additional fundraising for a full budget over the course of the next couple of years. But behind all this is a commitment from Governor Carney and from the philanthropic partners that they're not just going to invest in the short term, but the long term. And that's work that Governor Carney's office has been supporting and driving kind of behind the scenes. So we're hopeful that we can partner with council and others to really create governance around the long-term funding that's needed for long-term support and investment in the solutions that we're talking about.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wallace. And just as a follow-up question, I'm aware of these even some national programs where, you know, they even have, I don't know what you call them, pay for peace, or almost like paid internships. Has there been an exploration in terms of your programming to actually provide paid experience for these for the youth to stay out of trouble. And I know it's sometimes controversial, but I think in the city sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures. So I'm just thinking out loud. Is that something that's being explored or looked at?
Councilman, I think you're referring to the advanced peace model out of Oakland, Javonne Bogan. And so Javonne has actually been to Delaware a couple times now to consult with Bobby's team, to consult with Daryl Chambers' team. And so we have explored the advanced peace model. No one's currently implementing that model, but we are aware of kind of the proposition that you're talking about to pay people a stipend to support their trajectory out of violence and into kind of personal growth. And so I know that Bobby's team has approached that a little differently than the advanced peace model, where they are actually trying to find workforce development opportunities that are paid through Department of Health and Social Service TANF resources to provide employment opportunities in parallel to the social service supports that Bobby's team is offering them through life coaching. So it's not the same model, but it's a similar approach to kind of giving them like a foundational level of stability. And as long as they're progressing on their goals, enabling them to participate in work opportunities that pay a livable wage.
Great. Excellent.
And we've also partnered with, the private sector in terms of placing people into jobs. And we've been pretty successful with that so far too.
Thank you very much, Chief. Council President Shabazz. Council President, are you on mute? Okay. All right.
Oh,
So
here I am. Here I am.
Okay.
Sorry. I was saying I was wishing that we would keep in. Chief, I'm always going to refer to you as Chief Cummings because you are a former police chief, and I think you do that due respect. So I really would like to practice and give you always your due respect in calling you Chief Cummings. But
I appreciate that, but Bobby's good too. But I appreciate that. Thank you, Council.
Well, this is a formal meeting, so I'm just trying to keep things formal. If I saw you in the street, you're Bobby, but it's a formal meeting. I think you do that respect. You earned it.
Right,
but Chief Cummings, sir, and I hear this is a question about the programming and the longevity, and good to hear that they're somewhat secure with potential funding because it's so intertwined in the government process, but still things get intertwined if there's ever a change in administration. So are we also looking at the progress of steps and things that you're putting into place to solidify them through policies? Because once it becomes in policy about in forms of operation and services in the operation of the government, whoever is in charge, then we could have some confidence that these good best practices don't change because administration changes. So is that being taken into consideration, and that work also being done into, that's one of the 7th recommendation of the CDC report with the WCAC, is that we address policies that are detrimental to the operation of into the public, and putting these new best practices in place through policy is a sure way of guarantee that the program and its actions has longevity.
Yeah, so Council President, as Megan stated earlier, we're being attached to a division within the state, which is trying to address that. And Megan's been championing a lot of the mechanisms that would cause some of that to happen. But again, there are no guarantees and a lot of this, but she is making strides to make sure that we build longevity into this.
Council President, I can add to that there's no sure bet that we can ever keep anything safe from transition in government, but the best shot we have is to create a lot of layers of bureaucracy, for lack of a better word. And so we are working to establish multiple layers of agreements and memorandums of understanding between all the partner agencies, so that even if we do have an administrative change, some of the work that has been advanced is not just secure in the budget the budget allocations through the positions in Bobby's office and under the Department of Health and Social Services and Department of Corrections, but that those entities are encumbered under memorandums of understanding or formal agreements between departments and divisions and the different agencies that are stakeholders implementing the GVI strategy. So we're trying to tackle that policy element from a number of different angles.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, with that, is there any other questions from council? Okay. All right. I believe this has been a really robust conversation. I know it's been a long time coming. Council, we're always appreciative of the work that GVI does, and we hope that this is open door. As we go forward, we can do more periodic, whether it's monthly or even every other month, where we're able to touch base with the team so that we can figure out how we can help on the council side to help move resources to you and advocate for resources to your program. And with that, I believe that's all the items on agenda. So I would like to thank those in attendance today and watching at home. This is the November Public Safety meeting, and please stay tuned for the December Public Safety meeting. We'll be posting that later this month. And I wish everybody a safe and happy evening. Take care.
Thank you.
Adjournment.
Take care.
Adjournment.